Well, hello there, and welcome to Freeform Disney. I'm Jeremy, and hey, today it is time to go ahead and watch Black Cauldron, or I should say, The Black Cauldron. Now, this is a movie that was picked. It's a monthly movie watch party that my patrons vote on each month. And this time, we were looking at the movies of the Bronze Age, also called the Dark Ages. I think there's a couple other names for it too. It's the era after Walt Disney died, and also it's called the Dark Age sometime for that reason, and also a bit of the animation in terms of what it looks like. So yeah, that's the age that starts way back. What is it? Just after Jungle Book, with the Aristocats, and it goes way off forward, all the way through things like Black Cauldron and Great Mouse Detective, The Rescuers, etc., etc., all the way up until we start the Renaissance era, which starts with The Little Mermaid. And Rescuers Down Under is kind of the weird little one that almost yet is a remnant of the Bronze Age here, but ends up in the Renaissance because it's after Little Mermaid. So, so yeah. So anywho, we're in the Bronze Age this time, and we are looking at the Black Cauldron. Now, the Black Cauldron is, I think I've seen the movie fully, probably, but we're talking a long time ago as a kid. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to have to say is I think I've seen it. But it has been so long that I don't really remember too much. I mean, I remember Gurgi a little. I remember the last time I took any kind of look at it was back a year and a half ago almost now, when I was going ahead and making that video on like the top 10 scary moments in Disney animated movies. Because I had to take a look at them like, okay, what about, the Horned Beast, the Horned King, the Horned King, And I didn't really look at the movie for touching on the princesses when I talked about Ilona not being a princess. So, it'll be fairly fresh to me here, considering. Just not one of the ones I know the best. And hey, hello there to Kevin Robert. Welcome. Let me see. Let me give the rundown for anybody who has not heard it before. So if you are new to going ahead and watching this, you're going to go ahead and pull up your copy of the Black Cauldron wherever you've got it, whether that be Disney Plus, or you own it, or you have it by some other means, whatever it is, it's all good. You're going to pull up your copy, I'll pull up mine, and then I will go ahead and count you on in with a 3, 2, 1. We'll start it up, and then up above my head while it's playing, there will be a timer. So you can use that to go ahead and sync up the watch in case it gets missynced for some reason or other. So all kinds of good stuff that way should help. I'll go ahead and start getting that ready to go, so it's ready to start up in time, because that'll be tricky otherwise. Oh, hey, and hello there to Arya Pendragon. So we've got a couple people in the house at least now. Very nice, very nice. I always love having a good few of you in and around. Oh, good, and Kevin, you got to see episode 9 of Bad Batch. Yes, yes. Continuing to love where they're going with it. Indeed. Oh, and Arya, first time seeing Black Cauldron. Yes, definitely excited over here. Yeah, I mean, different emoji on that one. I'm not really having to see Black Cauldron. I'm just here for, the heck of it. I guess that would be what I'd take from that emoji otherwise, right? I'm going to start pulling up my copy, make sure I have it up here and ready to watch with all of you. So many other things that just came out here on Friday, too, over on Disney+. Their Wolfgang documentary came out. Really want to catch that sometime. Oh, by the way, I should mention, I don't know how audible this is, but I do have an air conditioner running in the background. Normally I would turn that off, but it's kind of hot over here on the west coast of the United States today. So, yeah, it's going to stay on this time. But anyway, no, some things I do want to watch sometime that just came out. Wolfgang came out. about the famous chef Wolfgang Puck. I'm curious about the Mysterious Benedict Society. I hear it's famous and whatnot, so maybe. And believe it or not, I still haven't watched season 2 of his animation yet since it came out. So a few things sitting over there that haven't quite gotten around to yet. So definitely looking forward to hitting those here when it comes sometime. Sometime. Here's some having some water issues on the West Coast. Yeah, drought to be sure. Yeah. Probably will have much larger forest fire issues too after this weekend is over. We'll see. Fun stuff. Yeah. Don't recommend it. Do not recommend climate change for you. It's just not a good thing. Keeping the climate where it is, much nicer. Let's see. So, looking at Black Cauldron. Wow, I always get surprised by how short some of these can be. It's an hour 22, and I assume that includes localization credits and whatnot in there. So, wow. It means it's going to be like an hour 10 to an hour 15 or so. So yeah, always surprises me just how short they really can be. Okay, so get my headphones on so I can be ready to go ahead and watch with all of you. Wouldn't do much good otherwise. So what about you two, and anybody else who might be popping in? Have you seen Black Cauldron before? I mean, I know I saw Arya said it's the first time seeing it, so what about you, Kevin? Seen Black Cauldron before? Oh. Hey, Black Cauldron's new to both of you. Oh, very cool. And feels kind of mostly new to me. I think certain things are probably going to ring a bell and whatnot, but, yeah. I see Lion King. I love Lion King. Definitely I do. Okay. Let's see. So yeah, we got a few people in the house. By the way, I haven't been mentioning this on live streams enough. I should. But don't forget to go ahead and write down over there. Click that like button right there, because that definitely helps the channel out, helps more people find the video, and hey, that's always good. It means we keep doing this and having fun over here in the chat and lots of conversations. So indeed. More talk about Lion King. Well, I think we're going to get ready to go ahead and start over here. So, everyone get that Black Cauldron up and ready. And I'm going to go ahead and count you on in, and we'll all start it up. Alright. So, here we go. On a count of 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, the old classic Disney intro right here from that time period. 80s, 90s intro for Walt Disney. Oh, that felt shorter. Maybe the 80s one is slightly shorter than the 90s. Interesting. I know they have all kinds of versions. I usually like to go that way if I'm going to die too. Or be captured, yeah. So this is probably the darkest animated Disney movie they've ever made right here. Probably ever will, too. Because they took such a course correction in the Renaissance here after Black Cauldron. This just makes me think of Beauty and the Beast a little bit. The cottage over here. What, Sword in the Stone? Oh, loving Sword in the Stone. Yes, Sword in the Stone is Disney indeed. Certainly not anywhere near as dark as this, though. I'll admit the animation makes me think more Don Bluth, who originally started as a Disney animator in fairness, than it does Disney as much, just in that style. Of course, Disney was heavily competing with Don Bluth, I think, at this time. Yeesh, ha ha ha. You say it's like Disney's version of a horror movie? I was gonna say, I mean, as far as animated, Disney's never made a horror movie, so I don't know that I'd even go that far on this. I mean, it's just not the genre for it. It's not to say Disney's ever used horror elements. I mean, certainly one can say there's certain horror elements in here. There's certain horror elements in Snow White, though, too, for that matter. A famous way already. So this is interesting also. This is probably the most controversial of all of Disney's animated films as to whether people love it or hate it or somewhere in between. Yes, don't tease a goat. But hey, the pig will still love you. That's it. It's interesting how things are falling apart even on that home in the background. You can see that chimney. Nice touch. Dot dot dot. See, when I talk about my knowledge of Black Cauldron, I don't remember any of this. See, this is why you have the pig. It's like the canary in the coal mine right here. Now it's time to really introduce the Horn King a little more, maybe. That feels very Lord of the Rings. You put the ring on and for too long, then it gets stained. Feels very much that. When Black Cauldron was made, you're asking? 85, I think? Yeah, 85. Which means it's 6 years after Don Bluth left, but that also puts it, Secret of Nim would be 1982. So, again, speaking about competing back with Don Bluth and the animators who left with Don Bluth, because this has so much more in stylistic feel toward what Don Bluth did once he left Disney. It's evil power. Certainly black and white there. Oh, you were saying after Return of the Jedi? Yeah, Jedi was 83, so yes. I'm guessing you're probably thinking about the performance of Horned King here, maybe. In terms of Palpatine and having a similar feel. It's like I can see that relation there. I mean, being 2 years later, yeah, I mean, certainly the vocal performance definitely could be influenced by Palpatine from Jedi. This pig. So for trivia, we were talking about that intro back earlier, the title sequence with the Disney White Castle and whatnot against blue background. Black Cauldron is the first one that did that right here. So that was actually the beginning. Oh, jeez. Right off the bat. Nasty habits. Nasty. Oh. It's not a Smeagol reference. Yeah, it's alright. Yep, same thought here. That actually feels like Apu and Aladdin, which would come, what, 7 years? 8 years later? Yeah. But, you know, the Apu... and then everything falls out. Or even like that with the bite out of the bread. It's like... Huh. I can't help but love Gurgi off the bat. Kevin, what's the animal that stole the apple? Gurgi. You mean what type of animal? I don't know. It's Gurgi. So I couldn't tell you anything beyond that. What a sinister looking forest this is. It's well lit actually at the moment, but it's sinister looking by the gnarly trees and whatnot. Those pterodactyls. No, the dragons, okay. Or little tiny dragons. Or drakes maybe? Not sure if they have front legs. Drakes, they're drakes. Yo. Blood, by the way. Right there, the blood on the lip in a Disney movie. Now that, speaking of rare. It's gone already, but there was blood. Wow. Some scenery for you. It's interesting how differently they did the background from the foreground in this right here. A long journey indeed. Oh, that's been going really quick, so it probably won't take too long. I thought that was going to break off in a bad way. Why do you have the guard dog to make rounds if you're not even going to listen to it, right? Good times. Yeah. Yo. The atmosphere is intriguing in this movie. Love it. Now this feels very Disney. This kind of henchman who's the complete bumbling fool. Wow, some impressive chains for a pig. Might have grabbed the weapons, dear you. Yeah, definitely trouble there. It's like, yeah. Kind of obviously. I'm sorry, I promise you think someone like that's gonna care. Speaking of blood again, by the way, you can see old blood actually on that board. Man, I mean, like 15 minutes ago, you just found out about all of this and how bad it is to let the Black Cauldron get to the Horn King, and you're like, okay, I'll do it. It's obviously been a lot more than 15 minutes in the movie time, but it's like, dang, man. Yeah, exactly, Arya. How they just all let him get away. There's no way he should pull out of this. Quite a bit of luck right there. But don't worry, they're all bumbling idiots. We already established that, so see, it's all good. At least there are a lot of bumbling idiots, and once he raises his army, even more, probably. Yeah, at that point, it's a little dangerous, right? Hedwig is such an interesting character. Not what you expect for a pig. Well, now he's fallen pretty far. I assume it's probably about as far down as he'll get here in this section. His low point. Here we go. It's in the dungeon that they meet. Interesting, interesting. If I think I hear a noise, usually I look around first. What is she doing in here, though? Zelda in the Small Fairy. Yeah, I can see that. That sounds absurd off the bat. Be like, a pig, huh? Sure, okay. So random. So speaking of the darkness of this movie compared to what Disney would tend to do, right? It took 13 years before they ever released it on video. It wasn't until 1998. So, I mean, there's one piece of that. It's essentially just one that, yeah. Disney itself said, yeah, this doesn't really fit our aesthetic for what we think of ourselves on for Disney animated movies. And of course, there's deleted scenes that, heck, they deleted full scenes that were actually completed from the movie before it was released, too. So all kinds of other changes, so it was probably darker before that. Oh, and speaking of darkness, not that it's that dark, but this is the first Disney theatrical movie that was actually rated PG instead of just G. So, ooh. And apparently, you want more trivia on that piece. They actually had to edit it twice to avoid getting it rated PG-13. Or, R for that matter. In fairness, PG-13 was pretty new at the time, so that's probably part of that too. And I think part of the reason that it had to have danger of PG-13 is that animated movies in the U.S. didn't tend to actually have much darkness in them. So it's Pinocchio with the breaking strings, huh? No, you really like the extra trivia pieces. Nice. Try to add a little more in there, right? That's nice and lucky. You are the one true king to rule them all. Nah, he's got a little loopy. Got a little mad. I mean, there's how you don't need training. The sword just does all the fighting for you. Come on, sword, do something for me! Fend them all off! So kind of a spot where you're asking, are you trying to capture them or kill them here? You know, that was what they should have tried in the first place. Is just, please stand aside. Sorry, not please, but stand aside. I command you. We are leaving. It would have worked. Yeah, I mean, you could make that joke. Yeah, like the ring in Lord of the Rings and how it affects the user. Good luck with that, buddy. That's your role in the movie. See, I'm not a fan of this kind of henchman. It just is not a thing that works for me. It's probably one of the weakest points of things like Beauty and the Beast, too. LeFou is just not a good henchman in that way. It's just so far that direction. Too far. Definitely something I think is done better in the live action. No kidding, someone that powerful, a henchman like that? Yeah, no kidding. Bingo. It would be interesting to see what Black Cauldron would have been without all of the editing that came late in it. Because again, it was a much darker movie. Heck, there's even the talk that they would have actually let it go ahead and hit the PG-13 rating or whatever else. Or R, but again, that would be such a different route. I mean, I suppose that's one of those things you can go and blame on Jeffrey Katzenberg right there, who took over Disney Animation, what, a year before Black Cauldron came out? Heck, if he had his way, this would have been edited way further than it was. So it was actually Eisner that pulled things back on that. But even so, it still got edited heavily. Yeah, could you imagine a Black Cauldron that dark? That was willing to be that dark. We got Gurgi back at least. Oh, for a bonus point, this movie actually is based on, it might be a little too much, but it's inspired by a series of books. Or more specifically, the first two books in a series of 5 books, which are called the Prydain Chronicles. The first 2 books were the Book of 3 and the Black Cauldron, so the title itself right there. But there are actually 5 books in that series. And by the time we got to here, it's more loosely inspired. It's also incredibly short compared to the books, right? I've never read the books, but apparently there's rumor Disney might actually go and make a whole series of movies or a show or something based off of those books, because it sounds like they got the rights to them again a few years ago. So it's possible. And heck, with Game of Thrones lately, the Lord of the Rings show coming up, etc., etc., you can see Disney might want to go for it. See if they let the darkness come out of it, if they go ahead and do it that way. Yo. Yeah, the footsteps on the rocks, indeed. And we're all in now. Why do we have the other guy in here? I just don't get his purpose in this yet. He hasn't added anything to this for me. Intriguing. I can see how, based on books, or inspired by, more accurately, how there are pieces in here that probably could be far longer when it comes to it. Is that the same voice for Belle's father? I have to wonder that right there. To look. Because, man, if it doesn't feel like it. Certainly the style of how it's done is similar there. No doubt about that. Answer is no, it's not. But that's, it's Arthur Millay who does the voice there. Who you might actually know as Toodles over in the movie Hook. Or also he was over in Secret of Nim too. But certainly the style of the character is very similar to Belle's bumbling father. Exactly, Arya, yes. It does feel like a different distributor, and you're referencing All Dogs Go to Heaven, Land Before Time. Yeah, which is what I was saying about Don Bluth. So, as I said, Don Bluth left Disney along with, 9 other animators back in 1979. So, like 6 years before here. Although, an interesting side point is this movie was actually being worked on since, 1971? Black Cauldron had a long time in development before it got made. So actually, in that sense, Don Bluth was around before, during the production, early production of it. I wonder if he had an influence there too. Anyway. But yeah, he left in 79 with 9 other animators. And yes, this style feels far more similar to what Don Bluth did. With things like All Dogs Go to Heaven, Land Before Time, Secret of Nim, Fievel, An American Tale, all of those. What do I think of it so far? I'm largely enjoying it. It certainly has its problems at the same time, though, and I don't know how much of that it might be the editing to get it away from the darkness, and how much of that is that it feels like we're rushing through things that feel like they should be larger than what they are. But again, with considering deleted scenes and editing, it could be more of that. But no, I'm largely enjoying it. It's certainly nice for a different type of take on Disney. And I just need Disney to buy all the old Don Bluth films. I'm going to go watch those here and count that as Freeform Disney too while I'm at it. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, sadly, I never know. I mean, it's been something people have certainly been working on, trying to go ahead and get the answers. I feel like that's the only reason he's in here sometimes, is just comic relief. Interesting. Oh, let's see. What did I miss over here on the side? Who do you think bad villain this guy? Do you mean who's a better villain? Easily Palpatine. That's not even a contest at all. Certainly based on anything here. I mean, again, the Horn King, at least from what we have here, is incredibly two-dimensional so far. And really, I think that's largely because we're trying to keep him mysterious right now and not actually use him all that much. I mean, they can make him a little more three-dimensional even with that, but it's hindering them at the same time right now. And again, probably also partly because, I mean, if it's 5 books, he's probably a bigger villain that you slowly get to know, I'd imagine. Yeah, exactly like Arya says, yeah. The villain does feel imposing, agreed. But while imposing, there's just not much more to him than that. But again, in fairness, this is only from 51 minutes into the movie here. Actually, in fairness, that's most of the way through the movie, but still. There you go. That's why the old guy's in here, because said all children have adult supervision. Oh, jeez. Oh, and you were saying, yeah, because Palpatine knows how to manipulate Bidus time, work with others. And even in Return to the Jedi, just using that, and Empire Strikes Back, the tiny piece there. But even just using that, you can catch that so much in there, even without having to jump into the prequels there. Man, you just lost the sword just like that. Dang. Well, luckily the sword is its own weapon. And fights on its own. God, the exposition levels in here. Yeah, I agree with you. They probably are inspired by that too. I mean, we're talking the Star Wars movies haven't been made during that time frame during production. Yeah, make it a little more similar to that. It's probably intentional then. In case someone said, sorry, not seeing the comment on the side, talking about making that sword similar-ish to a lightsaber and how it moves and cuts things. Yeah. Poor Gurgi. See, now you had pissed off Gurgi right there. Now we don't like you. We liked you before that. Not a good exchange. Just saying. I mean, the Horton King will be, you know, quite happy that you went in and got him the Black Cauldron there. Just feels like there are boneheaded moves and there are real boneheaded moves. And this feels like the latter. It's actually a pretty easy way to stop it. Or really, one person just has to sacrifice their life. It is pretty bloody simple right there, isn't it? I mean, seriously, against someone like the Horn King, this horribly evil person, all you have to do to stop the person is have someone willing to sacrifice their life. It is way too easy. Yes, it's a conundrum here, but it's only because we have a small group of people, right? I said we sacrifice the old guy. Don't really like him anyway. Yeah, exactly. Agreeing with the comments there, are you? Agreeing with you, indeed. I don't buy it from her side. From his, sure. Not from her side, though. Again, more time could have developed that better and made it gotten there, but Garg escaped again. A scullery maid. It's not really much of a princess. Then again, we've called him Lord and Prince so many times in here too. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got an, just for this much of an idea of what the books probably had, there's an interesting set of ideas in here. I could see how it could start to expand if this is like the first 2/5 of whatever. Could be interesting. Here comes Gurg. Yeah, I love the rats are fleeing it. That's a nice use to bring them in. This music gives me a little bit of Haunted Mansion feel to it, a little. It's nicely done, actually, in the music tones. And the henchman just hurt the scene badly. Completely messed with the tone. But now the music in the background there for bringing the warriors up and walking. But yeah, it feels a little Haunted Mansion, even a little Ghostbusters, actually, intriguingly enough. Aw, good old Gurgy. One of those. Someone's got to go make the sacrifice, right? Gurgy, gurgy. Speaking of Smeagol references, considering Lord of the Rings, right? What, with Gurgi jumping the cauldron? By the way, I should note, side note is you realize this movie nearly bankrupted Walt Disney Animation. It was nearly the end of it because it failed so badly at the box office. You want to talk about the reason Disney never came anywhere back toward this? It's like... Oh yeah, no, it was a box office failure. Heck, its reviews weren't good either, for that matter. And think about it, 6 years earlier, they had a whole bunch of animators led by Don Bluth just defect and leave Disney because of where it was going. I mean, this is not a good time for Disney Animation. It's a nicely animated scene right there, that piece. Without Disney now, yeah, it's hard to imagine it being at a point of possibly failing like it was. It was so far down back there. I mean, at Katzenberg later, a few years after this, would I think it's a few years, right? Or had he already? Yeah, because Katzenberg just came in a year before Cauldron came out. I think it's shortly after this that Katzenberg would kick the animators all out of the old animation building that they had been in since, well, decades for Disney. It's where they had that small back area until they eventually got back there later, late during the Renaissance period, I think. Back to some fun animation in here, huh? Yeah, the rats again. The rats made it out. The weirdest little piece right there. It's the first time I've heard him prove at all useful in this movie. Granted, that role and what he says could have been given to either of the others easily enough. I think alone it would have made the most sense. Who really hasn't had a lot to do in this movie, frankly. The sword is so great. We want that. Ah, never mind. One with the cauldron now. I bet you couldn't even make Gurgi come back alive and be right here next to us. Oh, well, we didn't agree to a wish on that. I'm sorry, a trade on that. These witches seem way, way more powerful than anything you're ever worried about on the Horned King right here. See, this gives me a price issue. Gurgi sacrificed himself, but hey, we get Gurgi back, so it hurts a sacrifice when you get the character back just like that. I mean, it's still, you know, nice that he made the sacrifice. But it's not really a cost to our people, because the sword came to them for free. Then they trade the sword for the cauldron. Gurgi sacrificed himself. But we get Gurgi back by trading the Cauldron back. Essentially, since we didn't pay anything to get the sword in the first place, we paid nothing to return everything back to where it was. And in the meantime, we were able to kill the Horned King. Or, I'm going to imagine it's not truly dead if it were really coming down to that. Temporarily disabled the Horned King. Horned King for other Disney villains? Given that the what we've seen from the Horned King here, he doesn't seem to actually have all that much power, really. I mean, look at the witches compared to the Horned King within this movie for what we've seen. It's like he just doesn't seem all that powerful. Yeah, no, Ursula, Jafar, I think could easily beat him. I think a bunch of them could. I mean, then you have people that just wouldn't have much power, but heck, even people like Tremaine and whatnot, just have one of your stepdaughters go jump in the cauldron. Boom, we defeated him. See? Even there, we could go ahead and defeat him. I mean, Cruella could go ahead and command Horus or Jasper to go voluntarily jump into the cauldron. That would take care of the Horned King again. Etc., right? No, I think most of the villains, at least for the Horned King we see within this movie, I think most of Disney's villains could go ahead and handle this guy pretty easily. Which feels wrong to me. Yeah, forgotten about the pig, yeah. But again, it doesn't feel like the Horned King should have been so easy to defeat here. And I think that's something I have a big problem with in this. It was just too easy. I mean, really, the difficulty is jump in the bloody cauldron? Have someone sacrifice their life? It's just too easy. Anyway. I said, yes, they had to find the Black Cauldron, I grant, but aside from that. John Hurt playing the Horned King. Nah, John Hurt did a good job with the voice on that. It was fun. It's a nice end credit section here with the art. It's a nice orchestral piece here. You get kind of the piece back through all the other music while we're at it too here. And by the way, really when it comes to the darkness too, again, for a Disney animated as a Disney animated movie, you don't expect the darkness, and that hurts because anybody going into it's not looking for this kind of a thing out of Disney. Kind of makes you wonder what Don Bluth and his animators and whatnot would have gone ahead and done with this if they had done the same. Just an interesting question. So here, we were talking about how bad this movie did box office wise, right? So this movie, this one cost $44 million to make, right? And only made $23 million at the box office. That's how bad it did. It just... Ugh. I mean, that's painful right there. For an extra bonus, right? 101 Dalmatians was actually re-released, reissue of it coming back out to the theaters just a few months later, and it made $30 million while it was in the theaters. So it outgrossed Black Cauldron as a reissue of it, having already been out years earlier. So that's, Disney definitely completely U-turned and said, yeah, we ain't doing that again after that. Probably not too much localization credits, only like a couple minutes. I'm surprised by how short that is. So, normal end credits included, about an hour 20. Okay, I'm going to take these off. No need for these anymore. So, anywho, that is The Black Cauldron. Certainly the most controversial movie that Disney's ever made from the animated studio. I'm not saying the least liked. That's a different matter. That goes to probably, we would say, something like Chicken Run or something of that nature. But those are not nearly as controversial. Those are much more widely panned. There aren't people who also are big fans of those. Well, okay, there's probably some people who are big fans of them. Generally, though, not. Not that I've ever met a big fan of Chicken Little or Home on the Range. Whichever one of those two would be considered the worst. In fairness, I haven't watched them. I'll grant that. In fairness here. Good stretch here. So what did everybody think? What does everybody think about the possibility of actually seeing whatever, those books expanded out upon? Good movie, says Kevin. Cool. And Arya thought it was a fun movie. Yeah, I thought it was enjoyable. It's so intriguingly different from what you tend to see out of Disney. That is for sure right there. At least Disney didn't get their hands on Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. Well, speaking of Harry Potter, I mean, Harry Potter almost became an attraction over at Disney World in a very different sense of getting the hands on it. But as I said, Disney wanted too much of the control over how it would look and what it would be, and J.K. Rowling wanted more power and control over that herself, and, well, so therefore it ended up being Universal that won that one out. So the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is over there instead. And considering, I'm not going to complain how that one turned out. That's for sure. Yeah, I'd agree with you, Ari. The Black Cauldron's not as dark as I would have thought it would have been. No. It may be a desensitization, sure. I mean, if your only experience is other Disney animated movies, then yeah, it's certainly darker. I mean, if you think about it in that way, and think of it just as, hey, these are Disney's animated movies, then yeah, it's dark in that sense. And I think that probably hits it more. Again, back to what people expect out of animation at that time in the U.S. Even now in the U.S., that's starting to change a bit. But I mean, that's part of the thing also, part of the oddity of animation here in the U.S. is animation in the U.S. got heavily associated with being made for kids. And that's it. It's kids and only kids. That's changing more and more. Because even Disney, Walt himself didn't make it only for kids. It wasn't his point and not his idea. But that's still, like, the cultural perception of what it was. But if you go elsewhere in the world, that's not necessarily the case on what animation is at all. And hell, there's plenty of animation that is not aimed at kids at all, and should not be watched that way. Certainly it exists. But, I mean, it's one of the things to compare it to anime off the bat. Where anime in Japan, there's so much more depth to it than what there is in US animation instead, because it's not limited in that cultural perception as to where, who it's supposed to be enjoyed by. So, yes, and I'm not the only one to bring up anime for that. Exactly, like Arya just brought up. They can get really dark and quite mature. So, yes, most certainly. And we've seen more animated movies and things lately, too. So, certainly we have gotten more since that point in time. But yeah. U.S. animation, I think, is getting there more bit by bit, but it's taking time. So, we're getting there. Oh, well, let's see. When did Walt Disney die? Arya's right with the second half of that one. December 66. So, yeah, December of 66, which is, yeah, again, why we sometimes call it the Dark Ages or the Bronze Age, that starts here after Walt Disney's death. Technically, it's a little further after Walt Disney's death because he was still involved in a couple of movies that came out right after his death. I mean, 101 Dalmatians is the end of the Silver era, which 101 Dalmatians is the one I watched last month with y'all. But yeah, that's the end of the Silver era right there. And some people actually even debate it a little with the Dark era or the Bronze era, just because the animation style starts to have already shifted a bit, and so there is some debate sometimes on the 101 Dalmatians. The really thick lines if you think about how 101 Dalmatians is animated. So yeah. So if you look at it this way, I mean, Walt's been dead at this point for almost 20 years by the time Black Cauldron came out. And also, Walt being dead in 66, end of 66, the work on Black Cauldron, talking about his production, started in the early 70s and then took ages to go ahead and get made. But again, that's after Walt was dead. Would Walt have gone for Black Cauldron? Probably not, if I had to make a guess. I just don't think he would have gone Black Cauldron. Who knows, though? I mean, we will never know the answer to that question, that's for sure. But that'd be my guess. So no, it's not really 66. It's a little later than 66. Because, again, Walt had influence on the movies that came out right after he actually died. Because he was already working on those. They just didn't finish coming out until after, well, he died. So it's not quite that far back in that sense. I'll put it this way. What is the year for 101 coming out? 101's the last one that tends to get considered to be Silver Era, which is... where's my brain wrong on timing? I could be. There we go. Sorry, I was saying 101 is the last. No, Jungle Book is the last of the Silver Era. So Jungle Book came out in October 18th of 1967. So that's the end of the Silver Era right there. Which actually I did watch Jungle Book with all of you back months ago. But anyway, that's the end of the Silver Era, sorry. But there still is debate on things like those three movies and some of the feel and the difference in them. But anyway, so the Aristocats since 1970, there was a few year gap between movies. So at the tail end of 1970 was the Aristocats. That's the end of the that's the beginning of the Bronze Era or the Dark Era. And then that runs all the way through the late 80s with Oliver and Company coming out in 1988. So essentially your dark era, your Bronze Era is 70 through 88. Because again, there are no movies that came out in 68 or 69, so you can say 68 if you prefer. It doesn't make a lot of difference. There just isn't a movie in there. And then, of course, the Renaissance era is, generally speaking, the 90s. Plus 89. Who was the leader of Disney back then? Well, as I said, you're talking which part of Disney? I mean, if you're talking Disney Animation or if you're talking about the CEO of Disney itself, those are not the same answer right there. I mean, like we were talking about here on Black Cauldron, how Katzenberg came in charge of Disney Animation right there near the end. But if you're talking about Disney as a whole, and if we're talking this time period, because Disney went through a couple CEOs over the course of that time period right there. I never remember the name of the first person who became CEO right after Walt Disney. Oh, who the heck was it? Or did Roy become CEO right after Walt? Oh, my brain. Yeah, Roy took over right after Walt. It's the person after Roy that my brain misses sometimes. Because I think there's somebody in between Eisner and Roy as CEO, isn't there? Or maybe I'm thinking of Disney Animation, and that's what's going on in my head. That could be what it is. I might be thinking about the head of Disney Animation. No, because Ron Miller became CEO of Disney after Roy. That's who it was. There we go, Ron Miller. So that's the answer. It was Ron Miller during a lot of that time frame. Or some of that time frame, right? Okay, super short reign. Sorry. I'm looking it up. Card Walker. I remember I talked about him a bit in one of my videos, I think, when I was doing one of my videos on Disneyland, I think. Alright. So there we go. So here, fine. I'm just gonna go ahead and go through the whole set for you, because otherwise I'm just gonna go ahead and be talking too many names and go through that. So okay, Walt Disney is the first CEO. Then when Walt Disney goes ahead and dies in '66, then he goes ahead and gets replaced by essentially by Roy for a little bit. Actually, because no, Walt was never CEO though, right? No, Walt wasn't CEO. He was just head of animation, the creative side, essentially. So no, Roy was always CEO. It's just that Roy took over the head of the animation and whatnot when Walt died. Alright, so backtrack. Roy is the CEO, head of Disney as a whole in that sense. But again, Walt is essentially the head in many of the ways that matter. Essentially, Walt handled all the creative side, Roy handled all the financial sides, which in this case meant he was CEO too. So technically, CEO has come to mean more in that sense later, after Walt's death. But before it, the relationship between that creative head and the CEO was very different. I mean, the two brothers and how they worked together. So it was Roy all the way until 1971 was technically who the CEO was. But Walt Disney was the president prior to Roy. And then after Roy goes ahead and stops being CEO in 71, then Don Tatum takes over for 5 years, 71 to 76. And then after Tatum ends up going away, that's where we get Card Walker, who's in there for about 8 years, from 76 to 83. So he's in there. And then he gets replaced very shortly, super shortly, by Ron Miller. Doesn't work very well. He's in there for 83 to 84. Done. Gone. And then we have the Michael Eisner era, which of course ran for quite some time. I mean, it's hard not to be aware of Michael Eisner if you know Disney and its history much. But Michael Eisner was in there for, 20 years. Starting well, just before Black Cauldron came out, really. But Black Cauldron was already well into its production there. So, and then of course Bob Iger and now Bob Chapek. So, there you go. So yeah, they went through a few CEOs after Roy went ahead and stepped down in 71. Until you got to Eisner, who's stuck in there for a long time. But again, it paints the wrong picture, I think, to just talk about that and not talk about the president of Disney and the head of the animation. Because, again, early on, Disney was the animation studio. It was what it was. And they've always had a president, well, early on, they largely had that big president-CEO relationship. But it's later that that really changes. So, yeah, anyway. And we had too many business people on the CEO side and running the whole company lately, and that has its problems. I mean, imagine if Roy Disney was the one who was actually running Disney from the very beginning. And truly running it. I mean, not being CEO because he was that, but that would not have worked as well. That's why it was Walt who was the creative guy who was in charge of everything. And then Roy who had to go ahead and figure out how the heck to make it all work money-wise. And we really need that again. I mean, the theme parks need it again. Dang if they don't. So, yeah, that's painful. Painful there. So goes my opinion. Anyway, sorry. So, long talk there on CEOs and presidents and whatnot. And some of those earlier CEOs did have more creative side to them, too. Or at least were more willing to work with some of the creative side on the parks and stuff. Anywho. So we've sidetracked far. So Black Cauldron. Last comments on Black Cauldron here before I think I'll probably go ahead and get taken off. I think I'll kill this timer over my head too. So yeah. So Black Cauldron. I enjoyed it. It doesn't hold up in a way that I think I'd be like, hey, I'm going to go rewatch that again and again or anything, but it's not a movie I'm against seeing again or anything, so yeah. I'd definitely be curious to see those books potentially get turned into something bigger that went a little more in depth and was willing to embrace some of the darkness maybe a little more. I think that could be really intriguing. And I will say, love Gurgi. Gurgi's, and who can't love Gurgi? Everybody's got to love Gurgi. If you don't love Gurgi, come on now. I mean, I'll say that for Gurgi. And some of the other supporting characters, I mean, again, I think part of it's a problem with the whole thing just being rushed in time. That it should not have been so condensed, and I think it hurts a good bit for that, and probably for some of the editing that was done to reduce the darkness in the movie. So I think that's definitely a piece there. Yeah. MVP of the movie, either Gurgi or the sword. I mean, the sword's a pretty good MVP there. Hey, well, hello there to Dr. Stephen Harlan. Speaking of one of the patrons who helped make this one possible here this month. Sounds good. Feel free to leave some comments down below then after you watch it there. I'll try to respond to that afterwards. Okay, and I think I am going to get taken off, everybody. So nice to catch you, Dr. Stephen Harlan, before you popped in. Oh, and Aria says favorite characters also Gurgi over there. And yeah, bunch of hellos going on over there. Yep. Okay, well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for all the comments over in the chat and the talk. Always love it. Oh, and Kevin's favorite character, the pig. The pig is a good character, actually an impressively good character. I mean, early on seeing that pig, it was interesting. Not how you tend to go about working on a pig. So yeah. Okay, so to everybody, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all my usual, which is to have a magical day, and may the force be with you. Always.